qualifying for the Formula One Grand Prix and grid penalties. It took 3 hours after qualifying had finished for the FIA at least to issue the grid, and maybe it didn't take them that long to work it out. It had journalists pulling out their hair. 9 drivers received penalties for power units. Yuki Tsunoda, interesting enough, had a power unit penalty, but also one for having gathered 5 reprimands so far this season. So again, when I was chatting with Alex Jacques earlier on, I asked him for his thoughts on this topic. The grid penalties situation, as we saw in Spa and now at Monza, I think it's obvious it's not very good. But the question to you, Alex, is can you think of a solution that's more elegant than the current one?
You could look at the Constructors' Championship. You could look at hitting the teams rather than the drivers. It's very important. Remember, these penalties came down in order to reduce costs. When it came in, I think we started going from the manufacturer of Formula One car as fast as you can and throw away qualifying engines. I believe in the early 2000s, we started introducing that. And we got more and more sustainable, and we've had more and more of an idea of using fewer and fewer components to go around the world. But now we have a cost cap, so you can't exceed it anyway. So I think now that we know that costs can't run away, is there a need to penalize as much because you're constrained to the cost cap anyway? So that whole need to watch the finances through penalties potentially could be avoided because the teams only have so much to play with. I like the idea that we don't just rattle through qualifying engine, plonk in a different engine for the race, plonk in a different engine the entire time. I think that's important given where we are, given the year that we're in, 2022, with Formula One with its goals of sustainability and carbon neutrality. But the situation in Spa and the situation in Monza is very frustrating because it devalues qualifying. It devalues those laps at the limit. And that was a very long answer to say, I don't have a solution. But
it's great to speak to Alex. And I hope the viewers will agree that despite some of the audio issues we faced, we didn't have a solution to those either. So we just decided it's better to have Alex Jacques on the show than not to have his great insight. So apologies, viewers or listeners, for the less than ideal sound quality. Have you got a solution to this, Alex Yoong? The grid penalties.
You take away constructors' points, you take away drivers' points. You'll see teams making whatever effort they can to not have to drive those changes. Yeah, I think a short-term solution is just to allow one more engine in the year, you know, because it is shambolic that we have to wait so many hours to try and calculate it. And you're right, it does devalue what's happening in qualifying, because, you know, you look at that, you know, if you're a top 3 team, then, and look at this is how they try to figure out the penalties and how it works.
This is how complicated it is, yeah.
And it is complicated, but this is a great graphic that they did to figure this out. You know, and actually, I didn't look at it properly on Twitter, but I'm seeing it now, and it's fantastic. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh my gosh, but that's ridiculous, right? So if I'm an engine manufacturer and I'm a top 3 team, and I know I got an advantage over the rest of the grid, I'm going to plan on making 5 engines a year at the moment, and take my penalties at places like Canada, Spa, you know, Monza.
Yeah. And it is part of the strategy now, isn't it? And you could argue that adds interest, and sometimes having Max start from 7th on the grid or 14th or 10th or wherever it is that he ends up going on to win from adds interest. I think it was interesting hearing Karan Chandok over the weekend on Sky was saying that the incremental cost of an extra power unit versus the R&D costs isn't that big a deal, because I'm sure I debated that with him some years ago and he told me I didn't understand. So I might go and tease him about that. I'll tease you about Sergio Perez and Curran about engine costs. But more to the point, what Alex Jacques is now saying is we've now got a cost cap. So the cost cap controls the cost. So the idea of having more power units should no longer be a factor because of cost. So yeah, let the teams have a couple more, or just agree we're going to do it and it's fun, and we're going to just make sure the grid system can be sorted more quickly so that Ben Hunt of The Sun isn't having to wait for 3 hours post-qualifying to file his story, which I'm sure drove him absolutely mental.